In this post-match analysis, we're going to be covering the 5 things that Liverpool needed to do in order to beat Chelsea, a comparison of the actual starting 11 versus what I thought it was going to be, as well as the red card. Hey guys, welcome back to Voracious Reds. My name is Tarek. If you guys haven't already liked this video or subscribed to my channel, please do so. I'd really appreciate it. Now, before I go into the 5 things that Liverpool had to do in order to be successful, I'll preface it with saying that the red card changed the game completely. So my analysis will really be pertaining to that first half, as the second half we'll be talking about as a separate issue. The first thing that Liverpool needed to do successfully was play long balls. Now, you could see the intent from Trent and Virgil to expand the field by hitting Mane or Salah, but unfortunately they shot themselves in the foot because the balls were underhit. If I remember correctly, there was only one real good chance that Liverpool had in that first half, and that was from Trent to Hendo. Now, Henderson's not really the guy you want finishing that chance, and unfortunately it showed as he shanked it. So the intent was there, but execution-wise, it wasn't, and obviously that was one key that we talked about. The second thing that Liverpool had to do was block Havertz and Mount. And overall, they were pretty successful at this. There were not many times during the first half that I saw Chelsea and I felt super threatened by them. But obviously the game changed when Havertz scored from that header. Robbo should have been tighter to him. There's no two ways about it. But from an open play situation, I felt that Liverpool did pretty well. I think because of that goal, which, hey, you got to give Havertz credit for that goal because, hey, that was a great header. I don't think he meant it, but at the end of the day, who cares? It went in. So from that moment on, I think Liverpool was trying to chase the game a little bit, and that suited Chelsea because they were wanting to sit back and play counterattacking football. And I think that's when a couple chances were created. I think Mount was able to use the left wing more, which is obviously to his advantage because he has a ton of speed. And that's when he was able to feed Lukaku for a couple of chances, but we were lucky that Lukaku wasn't able to finish them off. The really scary point was when Mount was able to come in on that left side in a counter-attacking play, and he kind of just skewed it wide. I think, obviously, if Chelsea had scored that goal, to be honest, I think the game would have been done. I think down 2-0 in the first half, it's pretty tough to come back from that, especially against a resolute Chelsea side. The third point was Fabinho. So, how did Fabinho play? He was my X factor for this game leading into it. Now, to be honest, I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was tremendous by any stretch of the imagination. I think when the ball was played on the ground, he did a good job of preventing that ball from getting to Lukaku. But I think Chelsea, tried to play the ball over Fabinho, which definitely put a one-on-one situation between Virgil and Lukaku, and thankfully he did well in that. I think Fabinho didn't play the ball as much. I think he tried to get it out from under his feet as much as possible to give it to the other Liverpool players like Trent, or passing it back to Virgil to play those long balls. So while I thought Fabinho did okay, he wasn't really noticeable, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but he didn't stand out the way I thought he was going to. But I also think the reason for that was because Chelsea sat back on the counter. And so if Chelsea were playing more offensively, I think Fabinho would be needed more. And so, yeah, he was okay. Nothing too special. So the fourth thing that we needed was a worldie from Mo Salah. So did we get it? In short, no. I thought he was okay. I thought the Liverpool right side of midfield was pretty crowded. We had Salah, we had Elliott, we had Trent coming into there. So I think it was pretty crowded, and I think because Chelsea sat back, there wasn't much room for Salah to maneuver. I think initially in the game there was, but as soon as Chelsea scored and they sat back, I think it kind of shut Mo off from the game. I think, he scored the goal to tie it for Liverpool, but that came from a penalty, and I think other than that, there really wasn't much to Mo Salah. The last thing that I thought was needed was that Bobby or Jota needed to peel off of Christensen in order to create space. Now, that didn't really happen either. To be honest, Bobby played more of that, I guess, high pressing situation when Liverpool didn't have the ball. But when they did, he came into midfield. Maybe that was obviously to drag out Christensen, which didn't really happen. So Bobby had a lot of the ball in that first half coming in to receive play, but he didn't really do anything at the offensive end. Obviously, he came off with an injury, I believe, in the 41st minute, and then Jota came in, and I thought Jota was good. I also didn't think he did too much to peel off Christensen, but I do think he was a factor leading to that chaotic situation, which led to the red card. So, let's talk about that red card that changed the whole game. So, first off, did I think it was a red card? At the time, no. I felt it was pretty harsh for Reece James to be sent off. And I felt kind of bad for him, to be honest. I thought, well, number one, that ruined the game for everyone, really. It put a lot of pressure on Liverpool to, well, win the game from that point onwards because, well, they had 45 minutes, well, up a man. And, yeah, I thought it was pretty harsh, but after looking at the rules and listening to Melissa Reddy, for example, well, a handball on the line, red card, and the last man. Now, what that created was obviously 45 minutes of Liverpool versus Chelsea being up a man. Now, Liverpool should have beat Chelsea. There's no two ways about it. You're at home. You have an extra man. I think it should have happened. And obviously, it didn't. So, why? Why was Liverpool not able to beat Chelsea when up a man? The first reason was that Liverpool just couldn't finish. I think they had glorious opportunities, a few long-range attempts. I think they probably should have taken more of those. But they had a couple long-range attempts, which was saved by Mendy, and obviously he played his way into man of the match territory. So the first half of that second half, Liverpool played pretty well. I thought, they really were going at Chelsea. It was complete domination. That's how you want to see an 11 versus 10 situation. I think the second half is when Liverpool let up a bit. I don't know if they lost their belief in their ability to win or they were getting tired, but the more that Liverpool was not able to, play in a direct manner, Chelsea, again, grew into the game. They were amazing defensively, and so, hey, kudos to Chelsea. They were great. And it didn't really look like 11 versus 10 in that, second half of the second half. It really looked like that Chelsea was putting on a defensive clinic. And so I think if I were, looking back, I think the changes that could have been made was, I agree with Thiago coming on, at the time, but I think if he came in a little earlier, that would have been great because I think by the time Thiago came on, it was a little too late. I think the game had become basically, in Chelsea's favor where, they had grown in confidence over the second half to the point where, they were pretty much not going to be phased. And so I think Liverpool should have won, being at home. That really makes a difference. You're up a man. But I thought Chelsea was great. So let's talk about the actual starting 11 versus what I thought it was going to be the starting 11. The changes were in midfield and forward. So I didn't expect to see Henderson on the left side because he's customarily playing on the right. And I didn't expect that 18-year-old Harvey Elliott was going to get the nod from Klopp to play on the right-hand side of midfield. Now imagine how much confidence Klopp must have in Elliott to play him at home against Chelsea. I think that speaks volumes for what we're likely to see moving forward from Liverpool. Now, I thought Elliott did really well. To be honest, there were some instances where he probably could have held on to the ball longer or made better decisions. But to be fair, he's 18. But every time you saw him, you knew his intention was to attack. And, coming from an 18-year-old, I think that's pretty fearless. And I was super happy from what I saw from him. And so we're likely to see lots of him moving forward. The other change that happened was up front, where Bobby replaced Jota. Yeah, I was surprised that Klopp went for Firmino. I know how much Klopp loves Firmino, and I mean, I love him too. He's an amazing player, but I think it's pretty tough to bench someone who scores 2 goals in 2 games. Now, the reason I think Klopp went for Bobby instead of Jota was because I think he wanted to retain the ball a bit more, and as we saw in the game, Bobby dropped into midfield more. And so I think that was probably the tactic that Jurgen wanted to go with. Now, obviously, he got injured, and so Jota played in his position, and I thought Jota did fine. I thought, he was roaming around everywhere when he came on, and I think that actually worked into Liverpool's favor when the penalty happened. The last thing I wanted to touch on was Liverpool in versus out of possession. Now, out of possession was probably what we're used to seeing from Liverpool, where Bobby presses the defender, so, that Jurgen press style. We saw Henderson on the left, and obviously he's normally on the right, but he was more into that left role during, I guess, out of possession. Harvey on the right side was tucked in a little bit, so it actually looked like a 3-man midfield. And obviously the defense was back. Now, in possession, that's where things started to get really interesting. So what we saw was that Trent really pushed up on that right-hand side. Obviously more than Robbo, as that is always the case. But what we saw was that when Trent pushed up, it was more into that midfield role, kind of assuming Harvey Elliott's position. And I think we saw that even in the Burnley game, because when Trent was able to assist Sadio for his goal, Trent was way up into midfield. And so that was the first thing I saw, was that Trent was more, I guess, into midfield, assuming Harvey's kind of starting position. What we saw after that was that Harvey actually spread out wide, kind of assuming Mo's starting position. So it was interesting to see that Klopp wanted Harvey to be out wide. And I think that's obviously something that we can kind of look to in the future, because I think that's probably going to keep happening, is that Klopp really wants Harvey, when having the ball, to be in that wide position. That's where things got interesting in terms of where Mo was going to play, because if Harvey is on that right-hand side, where is Mo going to play? And I think the way Liverpool wanted that was that they wanted kind of Mo as that kind of that sole striker, shall we say. And it's not to say that Mo did not operate on that right-hand side at all, but it was obviously more narrow, more towards the goal, I think in the hopes that Elliott could also play those balls to Mo. So those are a couple things I noticed from Liverpool, especially on that right-hand side. So Trent going to mid, Elliott being pushed out wide into Salah's position, and then Salah, I guess, assuming a striker's role. And I think that's going to be interesting moving forward, especially, I guess, during this season, is to see if Elliott does play, I guess, more of a role in this Liverpool team than I thought he was going to. Will that continue to happen? Will Trent continue to push into mid? I think those are all fascinating things that obviously I didn't expect to see from Liverpool. But I do think that if Klopp is going to be doing this more going forward, I'm interested to see obviously how it plays out. So guys, thank you so much for watching. It was great having you. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel. The next video will be about Leeds versus Liverpool, happening this Sunday, September 12th. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it, and bye for now.